What up, everybody? What up, Facebook? What up, Instagram? What up, peeps? We are going to talk about presentation skills for the camera. So you're going to be presenting on camera if you're building a brand, if you're producing any type of content. I mean, everyone talks about public speaking skills in terms of the stage, but what about the camera? I mean, nowadays, everybody's presenting on their phones. Everybody's producing content. So how do you present on camera? That's what we're going to talk about today. Let's see who's hopping on real quick. All right, let's see this. There we go. So presenting on camera is actually really different than presenting on a stage, like insanely different. Hopefully you can master both, but just understand that they're very different in terms of just being on camera and being on a stage. So let's see who's hopping on. What's up, Steve? Haven't seen you in a while. All right, what's up, Maggie? What up, peeps? Everybody else, all the billions and billions of people who are hopping on. I see there's about 20 billion people who hopped onto this Facebook feed. So we're going to see. What's up, everybody? What up, what up? So once again, we're going to go over the presentation skills of just being on camera. So whether you're pulling out your phone, whether you're on doing a live, whether you're, I don't know, just creating content in general or a podcast. I mean, it's not a camera if you're on a podcast, but at least you're speaking. So let's talk about this. You have to learn how to capture, keep, and convert the attention whenever you're presenting. And it's really, really hard when you're actually doing that in a video versus on a stage. On a stage, it's actually a lot easier versus on video. So we're going to talk about that real quick. What up, Nick? Good morning, good evening, good night. What is that from? What was that? The Truman Show, I think. All right, so let's get into it. Like I said, on camera, it's very different than just presenting in person. It's just because people's attention, the attention span is very different. So when people are on YouTube or they're watching a Facebook Live or an Instagram Live, when they're watching a video, they naturally can just do everything else. I mean, it's like you're in your own environment, so you can just flip out your phone, just watch something else. You can go eat and while you're watching a video or something. So the environment is very different than when you're on a stage speaking. When you're on a stage speaking, the environment was built to focus that attention on the one person on the stage. Of course, you can pull out your phone, but once again, the environment was created to focus on the person on stage. So even if you pull out your phone, it's like the people around you are looking at you like, put your damn phone away. It's like in the movies, right? Someone pulls out their phone, you're like, really? Really, man? And that's that look. And obviously, when you're on a stage, people don't do that look to you as much versus a movie because a movie like shines and everything. But if someone's in an audience and they pull out their phone, they know in the back of their mind that, hey, it's kind of being rude or whatever. Versus if you're on camera, you're doing live or they're watching a YouTube video, they can easily pull out their phone. They're in their own environment, so they're not being rude whatsoever. They just stop paying attention to you. So how do you keep that attention? How do you capture and keep that attention pretty much? That's what you always have to focus on. What's up, Kathy? So let's get into it. First things first, I always find this really interesting. Whenever people start presenting on camera, we get all professional. It's like professional mode. It's like you start the camera, you hit play, and then you just get all stiff. You're like, hello, my name is Benji, and today we're going to talk about marketing. And it's like everyone just gets all stiff on camera, which is really interesting. It's one of those things that I knew people got stiff on camera, and I didn't think I would because I was an entertainer, right? I'm doing all these shows for all these Fortune 500 companies in front of huge groups and everything. I'm thinking, you know what? When I turn on the camera, I'll be good to go. But the first time I turned on the camera, I was just like everybody else. I was like, hello. So today we're going to talk about how to use your phone to make money from your phone. And it's like this monotone professional style that you have as soon as you start hopping on the camera. And so you just got to be aware of that. And that's the thing that you have to break through to begin with. The reason for this is because on video, there's no feedback that you're getting from people. There's no one there in a video. You're sitting there talking to a video and there's no feedback. So that's why you get all professional and stuff on the camera. Whereas in person, there's plenty of feedback. And so that's why people tend to get all stiff on a camera. What's up, Glenn? So just understand that part. Before I go into everything, when you're presenting on camera, understand that context matters a lot. All right. And this is where I talk about the difference between the stage and the camera. Context really matters when you're trying to capture people's attention. And what I mean by that is basically everything around what you're saying, everything around what you're presenting on, that really matters. So you have to pay attention to the environment in which you're actually presenting. That's the first thing you want to think about. So, for example, like in person, right? So if we're talking just one-on-one in person, then you naturally have someone's attention. You don't have to be like insanely high energy, none of that sort of stuff. You can just be normal. Just be like, hey, yeah, cool. All right, yeah, all right. Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on this, or yeah, I mean, okay, cool. Like you can do that in person. You can still keep people's attention. Whereas if you're, let's say on Instagram stories, right? Instagram stories is very similar to being in person because it's just really quick. What is it, like 10 seconds or no, 15 seconds? Snapchat's 10 seconds. Instagram's 15 seconds. So on Instagram stories, you can be more realistic. The same way you are just one-on-one with people is more realistic. You just pull out your phone. You're like, hey, everybody, what's up? And so you can be more realistic on the Instagram stories. On the other hand, if you're doing stage, you have to exaggerate more, especially on a video as well. So when you're doing videos, you exaggerate more because that's how you keep people's attention. Real life is really boring. That's why the reality TV shows aren't actually real life. It's one of the reasons why they have to fake reality TV shows. Because if they actually showed reality on reality TV shows, people would tune out. In reality, there's a lot of dead time. There's a lot of dead space. And so when there's dead space, people tune out. And all you got to do is just pay attention to reality. And it's one of the reasons why I don't actually go to events unless I'm one of the speakers there. The reason for this is because think of the difference between when you see a speaker on a stage versus when you read a book. When you read a book, the ideas are condensed, like it just gets straight to the point, gets straight to the idea. When you hear a speaker on a stage, there's all this extra stuff that they're talking about, the ums, the ahs, little things like that. Even when you're speaking about an idea, instead of saying the idea in one sentence, you use 10 sentences to communicate that idea when you're on a stage. And that's one of the reasons why I prefer books over going to events, just because it's just faster to capture the idea. So context like that, it really matters a lot. And you have to understand, like, are you doing an Instagram story? Are you in person? Are you on stage? Are you on video? Even something like a 5-minute video versus doing a live session like this. The live sessions are a lot harder to keep people's attention because sure, they will go longer, but still it's harder to keep people's attention because once again, they can just up and leave. I mean, it's a video, they can up and leave. 2, it's more realistic. And because it's realistic, you can't do cool editing stuff, none of that. So it's just this, right? It's just, all right, cool background, whatever, high-rise background, some guy talking. And so it's harder to keep people's attention in a context of a live video. This is why I tell people, like, in the beginning, when you're sitting there producing content, you're creating stuff, you don't really want to do live videos in the beginning. You want to just focus more on actually creating the 5-minute videos, the content type videos, and doing some cool stuff with that. Because when you do live videos, what you see is a very realistic, it's just a realistic video. That's what you see. And I can't stress this enough. The more realistic something is, the more boring it becomes because real life is boring. And so sure, people want to get a glimpse into what real life is like, but they don't want to see real life. They don't have time for that. Nobody has time for that. It's like, hey, I ain't got time for that stuff, right? So you got to understand the difference between the context of everything. Even with simple things like if you are the brand versus if you're selling something and that thing is the brand, and it doesn't matter if you're there or if another person is promoting that thing, it doesn't matter. So you want to understand the difference. And a perfect example of this is take a look at anyone who has a brand. Anyone who has a brand, they're focused more on the personality. Another example in terms of the opposite where it's not about the person, it's about the product they're selling is, for example, this company called Elegant Themes. They promote the theme called Divi, which I always tell people to buy. For example, these guys, if you watch their tutorials, you'll see that they're more professional like. So they come on video, they're like, hi, this is so-and-so with elegant themes. And today on the new Divi feature that we have is we allowed you to insert pictures onto your website. And it's one of those professionally made videos where there's like no personality in it or nothing. That's not wrong. In fact, that's the right way to do it. And the reason it's the right way to do it is because they're focusing on that product. It's not about the presenter. If you are a brand, like if the brand is about you, you're building your brand, then it's more about your style versus if you're promoting just a specific product, and it doesn't matter if you're there or Jane Doe or whoever's there. If that doesn't matter, then it has to be more professional, like more stiff in a way, because you want to focus strictly on that thing that you're selling. And like literally go watch these guys, go watch type in Divi tutorial. You'll see what I'm talking about, to where they're just more professional. They're like, so on today's new feature that we have in place, you can add shadows, and that's kind of what it is. So you got to understand the context first. That's the first thing you got to do when you're presenting on in anywhere. Just understand the context. Is it a 5-minute video? Is it a live video? Is it a replay? So you got to understand things like that. Understand how attention is captured and kept in the context. So just remember that. Now you want to ask yourself, can people guess where you're going? That's a huge, huge thing when it comes to presentation. Can they guess where you're going? This is one of the reasons why stories are so effective with presenting. Whether it's presenting on camera, whether it's presenting in person, doesn't matter. Stories are effective because people can't guess where you're going. If we can guess where you're going, in whether you're speaking on camera or on stage, you get boring. Because people, they just know what you're going to say. So you just naturally get boring. So if they can guess where you're going, you're screwed. You're absolutely screwed. And so this is why the cliche speakers, this is why motivational speakers who speak in cliches, they are the speakers that everybody hates. Everyone's like, oh, I heard that before. It's so boring. Yeah, I already know that. Everyone hates these types of speakers because it's very cliche, and a cliche is something that we already know, something we already guessed. And so if people can guess where you're going with what you're saying, then you naturally lose their attention. Now, you don't want to get to a point where people truly have no idea where you're going, because then you just confuse the hell out of them. They're like, what the hell? Does this person have ADD? What the hell's wrong with this person? You don't want to get to that point. They should be able to understand you, and they should be able to kind of guess maybe a little bit ahead, but they shouldn't be able to predict your entire freaking speech, your entire presentation from the get-go. Whether you're filming a video, no matter what, they shouldn't be able to guess everything in terms of when you're presenting. You got to understand that people don't listen to what you say. Instead, people hear it, and then we start to anticipate what you're about to say. We get the gist of what you're saying, and we're anticipating everything else at that moment. So if we can keep anticipating what you're saying, then we stop paying attention. So that's why you want to make sure that when you say what you say, people can't really anticipate what you're saying. And like I said, just watch any video where it's very basic. Like I'm saying, so basic that you in your mind, you're like, I already know that. When that happens, and when it starts happening enough, you tune out. If it happens a couple times, you're like, okay, cool, or oh, that's a reminder or whatever. But if it keeps happening, if you're watching a video for 10 minutes and it keeps happening, or you're even just live and it keeps happening, you tune out. And that's why you have to get to a point where people can't guess exactly where you're going. All right. Now, this is absolutely, hands down, the number one thing when it comes to presenting on camera. In fact, I want to see if you guys can guess it real quick. So all you Facebook Live people, or Instagram as well, I can't see that far on Instagram, but all you Facebook Live people, can you guess what I'm about to say in terms of what's the number one thing when it comes to presenting on camera? Hands down, the number one thing you got to focus on when you are presenting on camera. Somebody type it in. Let me see if someone can guess it. This is hands down. You already know it, all right? This is one of the things where you see it on TV. There's literally a name for it. I'm trying not to give too much away here, but there's literally a name for it, and it's hands down the number one thing in terms of presenting on camera. All right, so Let's see. Steve said good sound quality. Rich said lighting. Steve also said being awesome. Let's see. Mario said the audience. Nick said, how do you know if you're being cliched or just getting trolled by the audience? Cool. All right, I'll answer that. All right, actually, let me answer Nick's question real quick. So wait, so when you say, how do you know if you're being cliched or getting trolled by the audience, what do you mean getting trolled by the audience? So like when you're filming the video, what do you mean by getting trolled by the audience? Let's see, who's that? The best Daryl said, breaking the fourth wall. Interesting. Oh, that's actually a really interesting, that's actually a really interesting response there. Maggie said content. Okay, so once again, for those of you who hopped on later who didn't get the question was, what's the number one thing when it comes to presenting on camera, or to be honest, just presenting anywhere? So what's the number one thing when presenting on camera, especially on camera? So Nick said, all right, well, you said, so how do you know if you're being cliched or getting trolled? Basically, when I say the word cliche in terms of how you don't want to be cliched, is basically one of those things where when you say something, people instantly think, oh, I already know that. It's a status quo. Think status quo. If you keep saying things that are always status quo, you're being cliche. That's what it is. And hands down, you're being cliche if you just keep saying status quo stuff. Getting trolled by the audience, that's one of the things. If I don't know, I mean, if people are trying to troll you, just simply ignore them, to be honest. If they say ridiculous stuff on your feed, just block them. Just like, fine, block. I ain't got time for that. All right, so back to the number one thing. The number one thing, let's see, Kathy said eye contact. All right, so Steve was actually the closest when he said being awesome. That is actually hands down the closest. You've heard the term TV personality. That's what I meant by the term that you probably heard it. TV personality. It's so-and-so TV personality. He's a TV personality. He's a TV personality. When it comes to presenting on camera especially, it always comes down to your personality. Hands down, no question about it. It's always about your personality. Because if you truly look at what people say, like you literally listen to what people say, no matter what guru it is, everybody practically says the same stuff. Everybody says the same. I mean, except for me, I'm like damn near genius, right? And so it's like when I say stuff, you're like, holy man, Einstein has nothing on Benji Bruce, right? But when it comes to what you actually listen to what people say, it's always about the personality, hands down. This is why I do things like what I literally just did, right? I do things like that because that is how I actually am around friends. Like literally, I'm sarcastic as hell. I say things that's way more brutal than that sort of stuff. I say that all the time. That's what keeps people's attention. When people are watching you on camera, it's not about what you say. It's about the person who's saying it and how they say it. That's why you literally hear about TV personality all the time. That's why there's the whole term on the whole thing. And when it comes to your TV personality, you want to understand that no matter what, people won't like you. There will always be people out there who do not like you. No matter how amazing you think you are, no matter how awesome you think you are, there will be people who do not like you. Sure, there's going to be people who are going to say, damn, that dude's amazing. Benji Bruce wearing purple all the time. Dude's amazing, right? There's going to be people out there like that. Then there's going to be people out there who say, damn, that dude's arrogant as all hell. That dude got a big head and stuff. And it's like, so what? Right? And so no matter what, there's going to be people who don't like you. So you might as well actually express your real personality versus faking a personality. Now, there's nothing wrong with faking a personality, by the way. This is where you see the wrestlers, okay? So look at Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. So when The Rock got into wrestling, if you look at his whole backstory, in fact, all of wrestling, the personalities are all faked, and they make a ton of money, right? So there's nothing wrong with faking a personality, by the way. It's just a matter of people should probably know you're faking the personality. But take a look at The Rock from wrestling, Dwayne Johnson. In the beginning, The Rock was this goody two-shoes type guy. He was like the good guy, right? Nobody really liked him. Even though he was supposed to be the good guy, he would come out and people would boo him, even though he's supposed to be the good guy who's supposed to win. The bad guy's coming out hating everybody, saying, I hate all you. But when The Rock came on, everybody hated him. Everybody wanted him to lose. It wasn't until he one day, he actually got mad at the fact that people hated him. And he told Vince McMahon, he said, hey, man, give me the mic real quick. Let me just speak for about 30 seconds to the audience. So he spoke to the audience and he just went off on the audience. Like he absolutely expressed his real feelings. He's like, you know what? He's like, all you people, I've been nice to all you guys, and you guys are doing nothing but booing me. He's like, I'm the people's champ. That's when the people's champ started to rise up, and he like went off on the audience, and people started to like him at that moment, and he really became The Rock at that moment. And so you want to think in terms of just like wrestling with The Rock. Everything in terms of his personality, it was all faked. It was all exaggerated, but people loved it. I mean, just absolutely loved it. He is hands down the best. He had the best mic skills ever in wrestling. And I don't really watch, well, not really. I literally don't watch wrestling. I used to, by the way. I used to watch it when The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin was back in the day. I used to watch it, but now I don't. It's boring as all hell. But basically, The Rock had hands down the best mic skills ever. In fact, type in the YouTube, type in The Rock mic skills or something, or The Rock comebacks or something like that. Notice what he does all the time. He would do things which cool as hell. He's like, what's your name? And as soon as they're about to say, it doesn't matter what your name is, you jabroni looking, and he'd like go off on him. And everyone's like, whoa, whoa. And so that whole thing, it was exaggerated and it wasn't real. That's not something you would actually do in person. Hands down, you'd never do that stuff in person. On the other hand, he exaggerated, he faked it for the camera. He faked it for the audience because that's what captured and kept their attention. And so you got to understand that when it comes to presenting, it comes down to your personality, especially on camera, especially if you're building your brand. It comes down to your personality. You want to think in terms of how are you around friends. Be the same way on camera, just exaggerate it a little bit more on camera when you need to. So like literally how I said in terms of me just being insanely sarcastic, I exaggerate that, and that's the way I am on camera as well. If I see a moment on camera to do it, I'll do it. Like I'll just naturally do it. It's not something I even think about. It's just something I naturally do on camera because it's something I always do in person when I'm around certain friends. So you want to think the same way. Like what do you do when you're actually around friends, and that's how you want to operate when you're on the camera. Basically, you want to let your emotions come out. And I remember I was reading this book about storytelling, and in the book, it was talking about how to tell great stories, like how great movies are written and all that sort of stuff. So he was basically saying the difference between the good stories and the bad stories, the good movies and the bad movies. It comes down to the characters. A good movie has nothing to do with the plot. It's not about the plot. It's always about the character. This is why people love Batman versus like all the other characters and stuff, because of the character Batman. Nobody remembers what Batman actually does in a movie, but everyone remembers Batman. Everyone's like, he's cool as all hell, right? And so it comes down to the characters, to the personality. That's what it always comes down to. And just watch movies. Watch the Avengers movie. If you haven't watched that, watch that movie and look at the main character is the bad guy, Thanos. He's actually the good guy, even though he's the bad guy. He's the protagonist in the movie. And this protagonist in the movie, the Thanos, he wants to wipe out half the universe. Like, he literally wants to wipe out half the universe. And you have all these superheroes who are trying to stop him. This bad guy who wants to wipe out half the universe, he becomes one of the most likable characters in the movie. Everyone likes this guy. Everyone wants that gauntlet thing on his hand. Everyone's like the snap and all that sort of stuff. I hope I didn't ruin the movie for you guys. But everyone likes this character. And the reason why is because we understand his personality. We understand what's going on inside of his brain. And so he's like, I don't want to just wipe out half the universe just because. He has a reason for it. There's a reason why he wants to wipe out half the universe. That's how you have to think when you're presenting on camera. It's more about describing your internal feelings, or not describing, but demonstrating your internal feelings versus just using your words to communicate something. If all you do is just say stuff into a video without actually communicating that personality, people will get bored. This is where the whole realism comes into play. People naturally get bored. What was the name of the storytelling book? The name of the book, I don't remember. I think it was actually called Storytelling or something like that. It was like a purple book. It was had a purple title. It's hands down the best storytelling book I've ever read. I took so many notes, it's ridiculous. But it is hands down the best storytelling book. Maybe I'll look it up and post it or something. See, we feel sorry for him because he's stupid. He used the gauntlet to double the resources instead of killing half the people. Yet technically, there's an argument for that. If he doubled the resources, it still would have happened again or something. There's an argument for that, but whatever. But that's just the movie, right? But basically, when it comes to, if you look at characters in a movie, you'll notice the best characters are the ones who demonstrate their personality. So this is why a lot of people liked the Flash in the Justice League, because he demonstrated his personality in the movie to where he's this goofy dude and type thing. And I don't want to ruin the movie for people who haven't seen it, but basically there was a moment where they were fighting Superman. And the Flash, he can run faster than light, right? The dude's fast as hell, right? So he's running, and Superman's beating everybody up. He's running, and he's okay, if someone can run that fast, you can't see him. Nobody can see him when he runs. So he's running, and he looks, but Superman can see him. Superman just glances over. And the Flash, he's the Flash has this astounded look on his face, holy, he can see me, right? And little things like that, it demonstrates the personality of a character. It demonstrates the personality of a person. So you want to think of things like that. When you're presenting on camera, demonstrate your personality on camera. Say, I agree about personality. Cool. And it's really hard to do on camera. That's why when you watch videos of people, when they start actually presenting on a video and they get all stiff, what they're doing is the exact opposite of demonstrating their personality. They're literally taking their personality out of the video, literally taking it out of the video. They just get stiff. You're all right, you can see it too. Literally, if you're ever there when people hop on a camera, here's what happens. They're talking with a group of people, producers, whatever, or not producers. Let's just say it's friends. You guys are about to film something, right? There's just a few people around you. You're about to film something. Then all of a sudden, they're talking oh, yeah, cool. So, yeah, what'd you eat? Oh, man, I love that place. That's amazing. Cool. And all right, guys, let's go. All right, cool. So today we're going to talk about movies. And the movie I want to talk about is The Avengers. And that you can literally see it. The before, they're calm, they're cool as all hell, talking with friends, normal personality. They step on camera, bam, zero personality whatsoever. You want to simply exaggerate your personality, be comfortable with your personality on camera. That's how you really want to think when it comes to presenting. It is hands down the number one thing in terms of presenting. All right. So let's see. The other thing I wanted to talk about real quick is, when it comes to presenting on camera, you want to start with a main idea. So you simply say, what's the main idea that I want to communicate? And you distill that down to one word or one sentence. Just distill it down. For example, this video here, I said, okay, presenting on camera. That's the main idea that I'm going with for this video. So you start with just a few words, and from there you can easily expand upon it. But you want to think in terms of what do you ultimately want to communicate to people? The more clear it is inside of your head, the more likely it's going to be accepted inside of theirs. So you have to get very clear about what it is you're trying to communicate. And clarity comes from simplicity. The more simplistic it is, the more clear it is. This is why, in physics, they say the theory of everything is going to be very simple. It's not going to be this long, drawn-out equation and all that sort of stuff. It's going to be very simple. For example, Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared. That simple equation describes a ton of different things, a ton of stuff. It's very simplistic. And so you want to think the same thing when it comes to actually presenting on camera. Think in terms of, what do I want to communicate? And just think 1, 2 words or one sentence, just presenting on camera. Or let's see, TV personality or whatever it is that you're trying to communicate. Just make it very, very simple. When it comes to detail, you have to understand that the more detailed you get, the less people pay attention. So I know a lot of people, and I was talking about this with a guy who was over here where he was saying, like, I don't really like it when people like go on and on in a video and everything like that. Like they go on and all that sort of stuff, and they don't really get detailed about the information, and they just give basic, like it's like fluff pretty much. And I thought the same way. I thought the same thing. I was like, you know what? I hate it when people just kind of give fluff. They don't really go into detail about stuff. I absolutely hate it. Then I started going into detail into my videos, right? Because I'm not one of the type of people who says, oh, I hate it when people do this, and then I just don't do anything about it. So I decided to go into detail. Hands down, the wrong thing to do. Hands down, absolutely the wrong thing to do. The reason is because, once again, remember, the number one thing in terms of presenting on camera is your personality. And when you go into detail, you're removing your personality from it. People pay less attention to that detail. You haven't actually framed them to pay attention to the details yet. All right, so they're not interested in the details yet. They're simply looking at who you are. They're simply thinking, like, is this person interesting enough to actually watch? Is what they're saying interesting enough to actually listen to? At a certain moment, they may get hooked and want the details, but they're not there yet. And so you have to truly understand this, because it is one of those things where we think that we want details. We think other people want details, but they do not. They absolutely, hands down, do not want details. This is why, like, the videos, if you go to YouTube and you watch like all the big time gurus and you see all their top videos, the most popular ones that they have on their channels, it's a very simplistic video. It's like you gotta hustle. If you want to make money, hustle, grind, make sure you work 24/7. It's very simple. It's not detailed. It's not like, here's how you hustle, here's the details of the hustle. It's not detailed whatsoever. So you just want to think about that in terms of how detailed you're going to get. And once again, this comes down to context. So remember earlier I talked about context and how it matters. It really, really matters. Context matters a lot. If you're going to do, let's say like a Facebook Live like this, I can't get into the details unless people are ready for the details. So if I send out an email and I talk about, all right, we're going to do websites. In fact, I'm going to show you guys how to literally build a website. And I do that, I guarantee people are going to be like, oh yeah, that's great and everything. I mean, yeah, I'd love to see how the website's done. But then when they watch the video, it now becomes realistic. Details are realistic. And once again, reality is boring as all hell. So if I were to actually build a website, literally right now, show you guys right now that I could build a bomb-ass speaker website in 10 minutes, I guarantee a lot of people would tune out. Hands down, people would tune out, because it's too realistic. There's no personality involved in it, and people would naturally tune out. It's too detailed. And this is why I was confused as all hell when it came to webinars. On webinars, I thought to myself, I watched a ton of webinars. I was like, these webinars are boring. Like, they're just talking about basic concepts, like hands down, just fluff. And I was like, all these webinars are fluff. It's boring. And so one day I created a webinar that was detailed. I was like, all right, here's what you do inside of your CRM. Here's how you set up the lead score. Here's how you do. I created a detailed as all hell webinar. And it did not sell a damn thing. It didn't sell anything because it was too detailed. People weren't ready for the detail. When basically you want to think in terms of details, you give people details after they are invested. Whether that's like literally invested in terms of they pay for your program, or like they're invested to the point where they're practically begging you for the details. Like, dude, all right, come on, tell me, please tell me. So it's like they have to be invested first. If they're not invested, they will simply get bored. So that's why you got to think the more detail, the more realistic it is. So the more detailed equals reality, and reality equals boring. And so you just want to keep that in mind when you're actually filming on video, okay? And let's see. Then I also want to say you only want to talk about ideas that you know. And this is one of the things that People say, okay, yeah, I know I should only talk about things that I know. But when I say this, I mean, you should only talk about things that you basically mastered. You mastered them to the point where you don't really need notes. One of the things that you'll notice is that I barely look over at the screen. When I look over at the screen, the purpose is to simply understand what am I going to talk about next. That's all I'm doing. I'm not reading anything. There's no teleprompter here. If you guys see, I have I've never used a teleprompter ever. And the reason is because I know my stuff. When you know your stuff, what happens is your personality naturally comes out. It's just natural. And you simply, you don't actually get, you don't get that stiff vibe that you have when people are reading the teleprompter, because they're focused more on the teleprompter. They're focused on the words, like literal words that they're about to say versus how they say it. And so this is why you really, really want to know your stuff. So you want to present your truth. All right. So you said, Mario said, so it's like creating a funnel, but only with videos. Let's see. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in terms of the investment, in terms of the detail, yeah, exactly. It's like creating a funnel. Like in the beginning, when you create the funnel, it's very simple. It's like, all right, here, just enter your name and email. Cool. Here's the thank you page. All right, here's a couple pieces of content. And then eventually, when they buy the program, there's the detailed stuff. There's all the like insanely detailed stuff. But perfect example in terms of going back to the detail is look at any college information. 90% of all the information in a college can be found in a library. It can be found in books. The only exception are certain professions, like being a doctor, even a lawyer. You can find all that stuff in the library. It's like all that stuff's in the library. A doctor is something that you can't really, like, you literally have to go to college. Let's see, like a chiropractor. I mean, you can still find that stuff there, but you got to actually practice that stuff. But a doctor is a perfect example in terms of, it's one of those things where the execution is actually more important, or just as important as the knowledge type thing, right? So it's one of those things where if you look at all college information, it's practically all out there for free. You can Google it. You can go to a library. It's all there for free. So why haven't people actually looked it up? Why don't people actually know that stuff? Because it's boring. It's absolutely boring. And until they get invested, AKA pay $50,000 for college, then they start learning it. But nobody in college would study the way they study if they didn't invest that much money. If they invested, let's say even $500, nobody in their right mind would study as hard that way, like in college. Nobody in their right mind, they'd pay $500 for college. They'd just be like, all right, forget it. Like once it gets hard, they're like, all right, I'm done. Let's go to McDonald's. That's literally what happens. That's why when people buy programs, and they buy programs for $500, $2,000, even $5,000. That's why people don't actually watch the videos in the program, because they're not actually invested in it. Sure, they spent some money, but you can lose that money. When you spend 50 grand, though, you're like, shoot, I'm going to get as much as I possibly can out of this damn thing. You spent 50 grand. So, and once again, that also depends on how much money you personally make. So to Bill Gates, 50 grand is nothing, right? So he can spend 50 grand and be like, okay, I ain't got time for this. So he can easily do that, but most people can't. And so, yeah, it really does come down to that. You just got to understand when to get detailed and when not to get detailed. So you say, all right, cool. Then I mentioned, okay, cool. So yeah, I was talking about in terms of like, you really got to know your stuff. When you know your stuff and you're presenting on camera, you can get detailed at moments if you want, but once again, you no longer need a teleprompter. You don't need any of that stuff, because you're not focusing on the literal words. You're simply focusing on how you communicate. It's just everything else except the words. You want to remember the whole saying of, in the end, people forget what you say, but they always remember how you made them feel. And this is why the personality comes into play, because the personality, people remember how you made them feel with your personality. But with the words, people forget what you say. Like, I guarantee if we were to go back and I were to say, all right, everybody, what did I say in the very beginning of this video? Like, write down exactly what I said in the very beginning of this video. What's the first thing I went over? Nobody could really say it. On the other hand, people are watching this, they're like, dang, that is probably the most handsome person I've ever seen in my life. That guy is absolutely brilliant. I can't believe it's like, he's hands down amazing. That's what everyone here is watching and paying attention to, right? You're welcome, by the way. Yeah, you're welcome. But that's what you got to think about when it comes to actually like knowing your stuff. When you know your stuff, you focus more on the personality versus focusing on literally what you say. And there was a guy over here, this guy in the high rise as well, James. He's a speaker, and we were talking about stuff, and he wanted to film me in terms of just going over the whole process from start to finish of how I get booked as a speaker. And it was interesting because he was like, "You like got any notes you want to look at?" I was like, "No." Like that's lit. I was like, "No, what I need notes for? I've been doing this forever. Like I don't need notes to say what I'm gonna say to the camera. It's all up here, right?" And that's just because I know my stuff. And so that's how you want to think in terms of when you're actually presenting on camera. You don't want to talk about what you know. Otherwise, when you talk, it's going to be the fluff. It's going to be so basic that you're going to be cliched. All right. You're going to be a cliche type of presenter when you are actually talking about things you don't know. Hands down, that's what it's going to be. And a couple other things I want to say is you want to think in terms of how do you present. So not about how do other people present, but what's your natural style of presenting. And what I mean by this is you can present in like a storytelling way, like Les Brown. Les Brown tells a million stories, right? So it's like storytelling versus like me, to where I damn near don't tell stories. I deliberately have to force myself to tell stories, even though I know storytelling is hands down one of the best ways to present. Hands down one of the best ways. It's just not natural for me to tell stories, right? And so you got to think, are you telling stories? Are you more high energy? Are you very direct? Do you have like a wisdom type style where, like if you look at how I present, it's more the energetic type thing, whereas a wisdom style is very slow. It's more like, we're going to talk about how do you present. If you really think about it, and when you're really presenting, there's a lot of communication that's going on. And there's a lot of things that you're saying without really saying it. And so the wisdom style, a perfect example of this is Jordan Peterson. If you watch him, he has that wisdom style type of presenting, versus if you watch someone like Michael Jackson has an energy style. Michael Jackson's like, hee hee. And so he has that style, right? So you want to think about that in terms of what's your style. You said starting out. All right, so starting out with the 5-minute video, give me an example of light contact that accents your personality. So a 5-minute video, well, the light content depends on what, right? So what exactly are you speaking about? So I first need to understand what exactly are you going to speak about. Let's say, for example, microphones, okay? So microphones. Let's say I'm creating a video on audio. I don't actually know that much about audio, by the way, but let's say I'm creating a video on audio. What I'm going to do is, in terms of just creating it very simple with the audio, I don't have like another. Imagine this is a different mic. So I'm going to say like, all right, we're going to talk about the difference between the RE27 and the Shure MV SM7B mic. We're going to talk about the difference, right? So at this moment, you can get into detail about the audio. You can be like, this has phantom power, this has this, blah, 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 and all that sort of stuff. Actually, this doesn't have phantom power, but you can get all detailed, right? Or you can just be very simple. You can be like, all right, so I'm going to show you the difference between these two mics. Hey, everybody, this is going to be this mic over here, the RE27. Now we're going to talk over here with the... And all you're doing is really talking in terms of into the mic, and it's just very basic. You're just not getting detailed in terms of what it is you're saying. Detail comes from knowing your stuff. So the more you know, the more detailed you can get, but that's when you have to back off the detail. You need to know when to back off. This is why a lot of really smart people are horrible presenters. When you're really smart, you have to deliberately hold back. Like, you guys can't believe how much I hold back. Like, I'm such a genius. I hold back so much, right? So when you're really smart, it's hard for smart people to communicate because they naturally want to get detailed. Whereas all they have to do is just say the basics. Actually, Jordan Peterson, once again, he's a perfect example. If you were to read his book, Maps of Meaning, you'll see the level of detail that he goes into. Like, it just flies over people's head. They're like, damn, what the hell? You got to read like a paragraph about 10 times to understand what he's saying. The level of detail is insane. On the other hand, Jordan Peterson, he's smart enough to know that. So he pulls back. And if you watch his interviews, he just makes it very simple. The ideas are really simple. You still know he's smart. And the way he talks, you can tell he clearly thought through his ideas. You can tell all that based on how he speaks. But at the same time, he backs off of the detail in his ideas. So when you're backing off, it's just a matter of just understanding your stuff and knowing when to do the high level thing. Actually, a perfect example of this is you want to think along the lines of, can a 10-year-old understand what I'm saying? If a 10-year-old can understand what you're saying, then that's how you know you're saying it the right way. If you're talking college level, then sure, people can sit down and they can dissect it and be like, okay, cool. Yeah, all right, I finally get it. But in the beginning, you don't want to do that. Actually, you probably never want to do that until you're literally talking to college level. Actually, literally, a friend of mine, Adam, he's a biochemist. And Adam and another friend of mine, Tim, they're really smart. Tim is like an engineer, right? They're really smart. And Tim actually does this like really, really well, to where they can back off in terms of the details of what they're going to say. My friend Adam sent me this paper that he was writing a proposal for grants, like trying to get grants. And I wanted to read the paper, and he was like, oh, it's going to be insanely detailed. There's going to be a ton of terms in there that you won't know. And I'm like, dude, Adam, look who you talk to, man. Come on now. Stuff I don't know. Come on. That's literally what I said to him. Once again, remember, this is how I am around friends. And so that's literally what I said to him. And so you want to think in terms of, he knows when to get detailed. He got detailed in terms of the grants, but when he talks to a regular person, he doesn't talk about the stem cells and all. He doesn't talk about different types of cells. He doesn't say any of that stuff. He tries to describe it in metaphors. He's like, well, imagine it like this. Imagine this is an atom, and this is a quark. Or the quark is inside the atoms. Imagine this is an atom, and these buttons are quarks inside of the atom. And so, like, he'll go from all the detail in his brain to basically saying, all right, how do I make this basic? Like, how do I make it so a 10-year-old could understand this thing? And my friend Tim does it really, really well. I even told my friend Adam, I was like, dude, just look at the way Tim talks, and you can actually see how detailed he can get and how basic he can get. And so that's something that you really want to think about when you're actually presenting. And then remember, in terms of how you present, and the last thing I want to mention is practice. You gotta practice. Like, the only way to actually get good in terms of presenting on camera is to actually practice. Like, hands down, 24/7. Practice. And that, when I say practice, I mean like actually pull out your phone or whatever camera and actually present on camera. In the beginning, you're going to suck. Hands down, you're going to suck. That's just with anything that you start with. You suck in the beginning. You're not good at whatever it is you're trying to master in the beginning. You simply can't. So that's why the only way to get good is literally pull out your phone and practice all the time. Film every day. You don't need to put the videos out. Like, you don't need to do anything with the videos. Just film it and just be like, oh, okay, that's cool. Not yesterday. 2 days ago, we went to this show, and I just helped my friend film his segment, like 7 minutes. I helped him film, and then another guy there asked me to film him too. So I was like, okay. So I just pulled out my phone, filmed him. And he's a magician, and he messed up a trick, a pretty bad mess up. I mean, usually when a magician messes up a trick, like we can hide it, right? And most of the times when you mess something up, you can hide it. People don't notice. And that's what happens a lot on stage with any performer. If a singer is singing, they mess something up, they can naturally hide it. This one, he couldn't hide it, right? It was such a big mess up that everyone knew he messed up. And it actually changed the energy in the room. And so I'm filming this thing, filming the whole thing, the mess up, everything. And then once we're done, he comes up to me. He's like, yeah, delete that. And so I deleted it, right? The same goes with you presenting on camera. You can sit there and film. You don't need to post it. You can delete it if you want, but you got to film so you get used to being filmed. You get used to that camera being in your face and getting all that either good looking or bad looking face of yours. It's either or. You got to make sure that the camera's in your face so you get used to it, and then naturally you'll be good in terms of presenting on camera. And so that's what you guys got to make sure you do. Oh, and the last thing you actually do want to do is you want to make sure you got a permit. Like make sure you have a permit for these guns. Oh, I had to put that one in there. All right, so let's see. You said, I know not your topic today, but what's the best way to send out 50 initial emails at once? I've been doing it one by one. To do that, use yes where. So to Tammy, you're also in the program. So to do that, just use yes where. But yeah, once again, let me go through everything real quick. Just go through everything real quick. So one, what did I say? Okay. Remember that in person is very different than on camera when it comes to presenting. So that's one. Remember that context matters. So are you filming a 5-minute video? Are you doing a live video? Are you in person? Context matters. And then even just understand context matters. Then can people guess where you're going? Because if they can guess where you're going, we get bored. So make sure they can't really guess everything that you're about to say. They need to understand it, but they shouldn't be able to guess it. Understand that the number one thing is your personality, hands down. That's why they have the term TV personality. It's hands down the number one thing. Just think about all the news people, all the TV personalities in the news. Every person is saying the same stuff on the news. Every single person, every news anchor is saying this. They're reporting the same news. Like Trump became president. They're all saying the same thing. But the TV personality of that person is what actually gets the viewers. So just understand it's about your personality when it comes to filming, when it comes to speaking anywhere. It's your personality. Then you want to make sure you start with a main idea and distill that idea to where it's very clear. It's just one word, 2 words, 1 sentence. Make it very, very clear to a point where a 10-year-old understands what that idea is. Always make sure that you're talking about things that you truly, truly know, because if you talk about things you don't know, you're going to be so basic that you're going to be cliched, and people hate cliche. They absolutely hate it. So make sure you talk about things that you know so you can get detailed if you want, but you can also take the details and sum it up into a metaphor if you want, and just make it very simple to understand. But always talk about things that you actually know, and really think in terms of how do you present? Do you want to tell stories? Do you want to be the wisdom guy? Do you want to be the high energy guy? How do you present? It doesn't matter how other people present. Like I said, storytelling is hands down one of the best ways to present, but it is one of the ways that I just do not do because it's just not how I present. Of course, I'll tell stories every now and again, but it's just not how I present. Versus like Les Brown, you look at Les Brown, the dude, 90% of what he does is storytelling. And so you want to think in terms of there is no right or wrong. It's just a matter of how do you present. And then also practice. Just keep doing it over and over and over again. And then make sure you have a permit for these guns. All right. Enough of that. All right. Any other final questions? I guess we got a few more minutes. Any other final questions? I think we're running out of time on Instagram. I'll see you later, Instagram. All right. Any other final questions before we are done? I'll wait a few seconds. All right, so tomorrow we are going to be going over stuff once again, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific time. We're doing this Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific time, so make sure you guys hop on. You can ask all the questions you want. You can write down some questions. You can send me the questions, whatever you want to do, just any type of questions. Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific time, we are doing these lives. Take care, everybody.